Thank you for joining the Town Hall on East Campus Community Safety. We are recording this session and your participation is your waiver. Before we get started, we would like to review some Zoom housekeeping items. At the end of the opening remarks, there will be a live Q&A session. You can submit a question now or at any time throughout the program using the Q&A icon located at the bottom of the Zoom navigation bar. It is our goal to address every question today, and to make the best use of time, similar questions may be combined. Closed captioning is available for today's webinar. To view the live closed captioning, use the closed caption icon located in your Zoom toolbar as shown on the screen. There are options to view subtitles or the full transcript, and you may adjust the font size. If you are having trouble viewing this webinar and need assistance, please email special events at csumb.edu. One of our team members is monitoring that email and will respond to assist you. You may submit a question now or at any time throughout the program using the Q&A icon located at the bottom of the Zoom navigation bar. Be aware that all answered questions are visible to event attendees, and all answered questions are posted with the event attendee's name. Today's session is recorded. Over the next 60 minutes, members of the university's leadership team will answer as many questions as possible. Repeated questions may be skipped to cover as many topics as they may. Any questions not answered live will be addressed offline and individually after the presentation. Please welcome Cal State Monterey Bay's President, Eduardo Ochoa.
Hello, everybody. If you can see me, there we go. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to this special purpose town hall to talk about campus safety in the East Campus community. Let me just start by setting some context to today's town hall. As you know, CSUMB is a very special university community. We live by our founding vision statement, which is inspirational to all of us and acts as the self-selecting filter, which actually pre-selects individuals, employees, whether it be faculty, staff, administrators, who are attracted by that compelling vision and want to join that kind of community. A huge part of that vision is mutual respect and appreciation for all of the diversity of our community. Our campus police, as CSUMB employees, are also equally gravitate toward us by the character of our community and our founding vision. And they see their role as supporting the educational mission of the university, like all of our employees. Foremost in the support of that mission by our campus police is ensuring that our campus, including East Campus, is safe for all of us. And it is, in fact, a very safe community. As president, ensuring the health and safety of all the members of our university community is paramount, a necessary requirement for us to be an educationally effective institution. I receive regular reports on campus incidents, no matter how small or inconsequential. When a more serious incident occurs, I am briefed in real time so that I can receive real-time confirmation that everything that is necessary to respond to the incident is being done. Now, recently, there was an incident in East Campus that rose to that level, and I was briefed in real time by Chief Lawson. The incident was handled properly and thoroughly, and no continuing threat to the campus existed. There was an assessment made at the time whether a clearly timely warning was called for, and it was not, because in fact there was not a continuing threat. So consistent with our usual practice and in the absence of any necessary warnings, we did not notify the campus of the incident. However, word of mouth has spread about the incident, and it has raised concerns among some members of our community, and also has led to rumors being spread about the particulars of the incident. And that's why we thought it would be appropriate to address those concerns and those rumors head on by scheduling this town hall and sharing all the information that we can share with you at this time. So that's a little bit the context. And now I'm going to turn to Chief Lawson to give us an account of the incident. And after we do that, I'll make some concluding remarks and we'll open it up to questions and answers. Chief Lawson.
Thank you, Dr. Ochoa. Thank you for the opportunity to address the community. Yeah, I definitely want to do some question and answer. I would love to talk about the East Campus and what a safe and terrific community it is. But first, I'd like to just summarize the events of the arrest and address a couple of the bigger questions or concerns that have been raised by community members, if I may. So if I sound like I'm reading, it's because I am. A former East Campus resident and former student Thomas Shefflett was arrested for multiple weapons-related felony and misdemeanor charges. This case is still under investigation and felony charges are pending with the Monterey County Superior Court. So I'm limited as to the amount of details I can release, but here's what I can tell you, and I hope that it's enough. On February 10th, UPD officers responded to Antietam Court to assist the Monterey County Sheriff's Department with the civil eviction of an East Campus resident and former student. Upon arrival, UPD officers quickly identified illegal weapons that had been loaded into a moving truck and placed the suspect into custody. Upon clearing the apartments, officers observed some items of concern to include weapons, parts, chemicals, tools, wires. The apartment was in disarray and there were loose boxes and loose items everywhere. To err on the side of safety, UPD officers contacted the Monterey County Bomb Squad, who checked the apartment for bomb-making materials with negative results. Ultimately, our officers seized several weapons to include a loaded 9mm handgun, a large quantity of AR-15 weapon parts, including parts and tools for the assembly of ghost guns. The suspect has completely moved out of his apartment and is no longer a part of the CSUMB community. The question that was addressed, or the question that was brought forward to me, was a question of racism, and community members have asked if this suspect had any affiliation with hate groups. He did have a swastika taped up on his wall in his apartment, and somewhere in the apartment, though I didn't see it, was a photo of Adolf Hitler. Officers conducted and continue to conduct a thorough investigation, and we have not found any evidence that the resident holds any, or former resident holds any affiliation with hate groups. If any such affiliations are revealed during the course of the investigation, that information will be shared with our federal law enforcement partners. Though we agree there's no place for racism on campus, incredibly poor taste doesn't constitute a crime. There's no evidence found of any intentions to do harm to any community members. The motivation for possession of the weapons and the ghost gun parts appears to be for financial gain. Dr. Ochoa addressed kind of why a timely warning was not issued. We follow strictly the system-wide Clery policy, and it has to be a crime that occurred on campus. Clery crime and a crime that poses a serious and ongoing threat to the community. And the policy says if it is determined that any of these three factors are not met, then no timely warning shall be issued. So Mr. Shefflett is no longer a student at CSU Monterey Bay. He's no longer a resident at CSUMB. And thanks to the great work of our officers, all of his weapons have been seized and he's facing multiple felony charges with Monterey County Superior Court. That's all I have for a statement. And Dr. Ochoa, we want to open up to Q&A unless there's something you wanted to add, sir.
Yeah, we can, what we could do perhaps here now is if there are questions that are specifically about this incident that are left unanswered by your account, we can take some of those now, but I'd like to reserve some time also for a broader discussion of how our campus police works in terms of supporting the community, some of the activities we're engaged in, and some that we can expand in the future, and just some final thoughts about the East Campus community in general. So let's open it up now. I think Aaron is our moderator. So Aaron, let's focus on those kinds of questions, and let's run them for about 15 minutes, and then we'll come back and switch topics a little bit.
Thank you, President Ochoa. The first question related to those topics specific to this exact incident is, how did the police become involved in this issue? Were there complaints, et cetera, other reasons why the police would be involved?
Chief?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Mr. Cheflet lived here back in the late 90s, early 2000s with his mother, who was a CSUMB student. And then he came back around 2011 as a student and resident, and he's lived in a variety of capacities on campus. Our officers went out to the scene to assist the sheriff's department with a civil eviction. The questions come up as, what was he evicted for? I believe it was for non-payment, but that's not a police-related thing. So the officers who arrived on scene located the weapons and arrested him for possession of the weapons. We did not receive a complaint. We did not receive a tip of any kind.
So as I recall, Chief, when you told me about this, this individual was in the process of moving out that day, the day that he was going to be physically evicted. And that's why he had things in a pickup truck or U-Haul, and that's why it was visible to the officers when they came, correct?
Yeah, for the details, he was, according to the civil eviction, he was not supposed to be present at the residence anymore. He was supposed to have completely moved out. The sheriff's department was there to make sure he was moved out and to help the housing management company change the locks and such. And there was a moving truck out front. There were items everywhere, strewn all over the stairway and in the driveway, and the first weapons that were located were actually located sitting in the back of an otherwise empty, large U-Haul moving van.
Yep.
You've partly answered this question, but to make sure that we're being fair to everyone who's asking questions, I'll ask the direct one. Were there any warnings beforehand that this former student may have had weapons?
No, we had no warnings or indications of weapons, no complaints of weapons. Yeah, it's just the officer's observations at the time.
Does the student have a history of, or I should say, does the former student have a history of contact with UPD, local police, or faculty for race-related incidents?
That's a no. Their UPD's had previous contacts with the suspect, but we've had no red flags or indications of any types of weapons or hate group affiliations or anything to that effect.
Will there be a protective order for the CSUMB community to prevent this person from returning to campus despite the criminal charges?
Yeah, it's an open campus. It's tough. So he's out on bail right now and has a right to be on campus. We are appealing to the district attorney's office to see if we can get a condition of his parole or probation, if that in fact becomes the case, as a stay away order from CSU Monterey Bay. And we're working closely with the DA's office to try to make that happen.
What is a ghost gun?
That's a good question. A ghost gun, those are weapons purchased with incomplete frames and receivers. They're called 80% weapons that are completed, which is by completing them, they drill a couple holes out of them and assembled by the purchaser. Okay, they often have no identifying marks and are frequently not registered by the purchaser, hence the term ghost gun. They're often untraceable, unregistered, and of course illegal. But the purchase of those weapons parts is pretty easy to do over the internet. So we've seen an uptick in ghost guns nationally.
There's a question about whether or not this individual is a traditional college age student, 18 to 22, or are they in some other age bracket?
Mr. Shiflett is 36 years of age.
One moment, I'm scanning through for specific questions that relate to the incident.
Mhm.
Does UPD know of his current whereabouts? Do you know if he has returned or may return to East Campus?
He returned to recover his items. He had to notify us when he was returning and was supervised by the housing management company when he did so, but he just completely moved out, and we do not have a forwarding address for him.
Is there any indication that the individual was manufacturing weapons for sale?
Again, the investigation's ongoing. I don't want to say too much about the investigation, but that's one of the things that we're trying to prove, because we believe that was the motivation for purchasing the weapons parts.
Are you aware of any times that the former student reported suspicious activity to UPD, particularly against people of color?
No, I'm not.
I'll ask this question, but President Cho, you might have to answer this one. Did the student graduate, or are they just no longer a student at the university?
I don't have the answer to that specifically. I know that they're no longer a student, but I don't know the terms of his separation from the university.
What or were there chemicals found at the site of the apartment?
Yeah, there were items found, and they were determined by the bomb squad to be just cleaning items, quantities of cleaning items for vehicle parts or for just standard kitchen cleaning stuff. I guess I should add, there was a quantity of gunpowder, empty ammunition brass, and a reloading kit as well, which not illegal to possess, but certainly raised concern of the officers while they were on scene.
Question is, was the arrest peaceful, or was there an altercation in the arrest?
No, there was no altercation in the arrest. There was no resistance in the arrest.
This individual indicates that that in your prior statement, you may have implied that the person was known to UPD or had previous contact with UPD. If so, what was the nature of that contact?
Well, I don't have a list of the contacts, but nothing related to any sort of racial bias, nothing related to weapons, nothing that would have raised a red flag to make us believe that he would be in possession of or manufacturing weapons.
One moment, I'm scanning the questions here. The individual asks that they heard that this person had contacted UPD multiple times about suspicious activity related to people of color. Can you confirm that, and or how do you handle repeat calls from a specific individual about suspicious activity?
Well, I can't confirm that he had made those types of calls, requests from the police department. The University Police Department works very closely with the care team on campus, counseling center, Office of Residential Life. If we see repeated calls from a residence, typically that there's an interdepartment discussion about resourcing that person and trying to identify a course of action. It's not strictly a UPD thing. So, but I can't confirm that he was calling and making those types of reports. No.
Well, this individual asks that they live down the street from this particular address. Why were they not informed about the arrest?
Again, we use the criteria for a timely warning to decide whether we're going to do an announcement to the campus community based on the criteria set forth by the CSU system-wide policy, and there's no ongoing threat to the community. He was in physical custody and all of the dangerous items had been seized by our officers.
I believe you may have already partially answered this question, but I want to make sure that we're giving everyone's questions fair hearing. Did the individual have any specific encounters with UPD prior to this event?
Yeah, there were other contacts. And I asked investigations what if those contacts were related to weapons, or if any of those contacts would have raised a red flag, and the answer was no. I don't know what the nature of those contacts were, but it's realistic for someone who's been living out there in the community in one capacity or another for 10 years to have had some sort of contact with the police department.
An individual says that they heard that UPD may have been notified in advance about this individual. Did you have any knowledge of this individual's activities before the date he was arrested?
We were aware of the individual, but we had no indication that this individual had weapons inside their apartment.
This question is, you mentioned there are felony charges. How might an individual being charged with felonies on our campus affect our community?
Well, there are weapons enhancement charges for campuses. So what might be a misdemeanor off campus might be a felony on campus, like the loaded 9mm weapon on campus is a felony. So without listing the charges themselves, how might it affect the community? I like to think that the community's safer. Our officers went out there. We don't typically go out on civil evictions. They're civil evictions for a reason. But our officers were present that morning and they were able to make an observation and get a whole bunch of weapons off the street and take someone to jail. I feel like our community is safer because of the arrest. I don't think that the arrest makes our community less safe.
I would add that, there's some, there could be an insinuation in the question that it might make sense for us to bar people from our campus who have been accused of a felony. And of course, that would not be consistent with our system of justice. I mean, every individual is innocent until proven guilty. And you can't take that sort of action unilaterally. That was the thought that was prompted by that question.
The next question, will the campus community be provided with a picture of the individual so that they can report to UPD if they see them on the premise?
Yeah, we could, arrest information is public information. So I planned on putting that out, but we could do that. I'm not sure in what capacity we could do that, but that's a realistic request for sure. He's not, he has a right to be here. He's lived here as a child. He was here for 10 years as a student, and he's going to have friends in the community. And until we can get to a place where a condition of his probation or parole says he can't be here, seeing him and calling the police may not bear fruit.
Yeah.
Did the individual have a roommate while they were living here?
Not at the time of the eviction. So I don't know. I couldn't tell you about his 10-year history here.
One moment, I'm still scanning here. Just a moment, still scanning.
Well, I was going to devote 3 more minutes, and then on the hour, I was going to switch to the next topic. It sounds like we may be reaching the point where no new questions are being raised.
I do have a couple. I'm sorry. We have about 40 in the queue, so it takes a little bit to scroll down through all of them.
All right.
Can Chief Lawson define what a threat to the campus community constitutes?
Well, again, we're talking about the timely warning policy from the CSU system, and it specifically states, I'll pull it up for you, a serious and ongoing threat to the community. And it's an ongoing threat unless it's mitigated. If we know that a crime has occurred or is in fact about to occur, that's about to occur on campus, and that we're unable to mitigate that threat through a custodial arrest or seizure of whatever dangerous items present that threat, then it's an ongoing threat per the timely warning policy.
Yeah, and in Clery Act, I mean, that's of course driven by the main focus is sexual assault crimes, and if there's a perpetrator that's still at large, that would be the obvious case of a continuing threat.
The next question is, does the public have access to the UPD crime logs?
Yeah, our Clery crime log is posted on the internet, and it's put up or updated every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, minus holidays.
Sort of a general question here, but related to the topic. Are there guidelines for what individuals are allowed to possess on East Campus? I believe they're specifically talking about weapons.
There are, yeah. And anyone that moves into East Campus is signing a housing agreement that has that language in it as well. But possession of a firearm on a campus is a felony. And elsewhere in the state, it may be a misdemeanor. And again, someone signs their contract, that's in the language of the contract, and it's also on the signs as you drive into the entrances of the campus.
Why was the student living in student housing if they were not attending CSUMB?
Well, they were attending, and they stopped attending. They no longer, because they stopped being a student, that's what started the eviction process. But as long as they were a student, they were there legitimately. But at some point they stopped being a student. At that point they had to leave. He didn't leave, he got evicted.
What is the difference between a timely warning and an emergency notification?
I wonder if Shanika Jones asked that question, because she trains me on that all the time. Emergency notification is, well, I gave you the definition of a timely warning. Emergency notification is something that's happening right now. So some immediate threat to the community. That's what you would sign up for, otter alerts. And the folks who are out there watching this right now, if you haven't signed up for otter alerts, you can go to csumb.edu/otter alert and get signed up. We have the ability to send messages out in almost real time.
There is an individual who says that there's a rumor the individual is living elsewhere on East Campus. Do we have any information to confirm or deny that?
Again, he has friends on campus, so if that's the case, I would love to know about it. You can report to the University Police Department. Our 24-hour non-emergency number is 831-655-0268. And if you're not comfortable doing that, you can log into go to our website and place an anonymous tip in there. We'd love to hear from the community. We are not aware of him staying on campus right now.
Was there any potential danger to nearby apartments when the decision was made to contact the Monterey County Bomb Squad?
As you know, hindsight's 2020. There was no risk to those adjoining apartments, but the officers on scene did contact the Office of Residential Life, who sent out professional staff, and we did evacuate those apartments as a precaution.
Is the individual charged with these crimes currently detained, or are they out on bail?
He's currently out on bail. With COVID-19 right now, bail was set at $30,000, but bail amounts are at 10%. So it was $3,000 bail. He posted bail and he is out.
One moment. I have a few more to scroll through here to make sure there's not any specifically related to this incident. Moment.
Well,
There's a question as to whether or not contacts between the former student and other members of the community, if there is any known contacts, or any of those being investigated.
I'm not clear on the question. He has, again, friends and neighbors that he's grown up with on campus here. So I have no doubt that he still knows people in the community and may or may not be having contact with those folks. We're not tracing his phone or his activities, so we have no right to do so.
Can you confirm what the case number is, so if individuals are interested in following this, that they can follow it?
You know, I can find that information out. I have a lot of paperwork on my desk, and the actual case number on this one is not among them.
Is there any indication that this individual was disgruntled and may attempt to engage the community in the future?
No indication. Somebody asked earlier about the arrest. It was very calm and collected. Was cooperative with officers and gave no indications of any sort of instability.
I believe we have all of the with the case number. I think that's the last one. Several people posted what they believe the case number might be, but I think we should. But I wanted to ask the question so that you could answer that. I believe we've covered all the questions other than that specifically related to this incident that are unique. There are some repeats of the same questions, but I believe we've covered all of the ones specifically related to this topic.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Well, Chief, I want to give you a chance now to talk a little more broadly about the general. Obviously, this issue has raised some concerns that people have, particularly, we don't live in a vacuum. We're surrounded by a society that's going through a lot of turmoil right now with the death of George Floyd, the rise of extremist groups, the rise in hate crimes against Asian Americans. All of these things have created an environment that makes people uneasy. And so an incident like this, can by extension raise some of those concerns about safety in general and how effectively are we working with our campus police. So I want to give you a chance to talk about the issue of safety more broadly on East Campus.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Dr. Cho. Thank you. I know a lot of our community members come from different parts of the state, different parts of the country, different parts of the world, and they have different experiences with law enforcement. CSUMB is a small campus community or a small campus community police department. Most of my officers, not most, a lot of my officers are CSUMB alumnus. They went to school here. They work here. A lot of our officers live here in the community. Their families are here. Their children play in the same parks. we're heavily invested in this community. And when folks start talking about the police department and the community, I want to jump in and say that we're part of the community. We are the community. We're shopping in the same stores. We're using the same parks, driving on the same roads. We care very much about the campus community. And I think university policing is a great opportunity to do progressive policing and change policing models. And my officers care very, very much about the communities that they serve. It's a very small community, and you run into folks. You know, one time you run into them, they're locked out of their office, and the next time something bad's happened in the neighborhood, and the next time you're both out walking your dogs. It's a fantastic community to live and work in, and our officers choose to be here and enjoy being here. That said, we're state police. We're here 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We have the same arrest authority. Our officers use a great deal of discretion. We're a very, very service-oriented police department. We respond on every medical and every alarm call on campus. So we probably help shepherd 8 to 10 people to the hospital for medical issues for every one we take to jail. A lot of police departments, well, heck, every police department says serve and protect. What really defines a police department is how you serve the community, and we are a service-based police department. We really will come out and jumpstart your car and unlock your office, but we're still prepared to respond to the worst case scenario of an active shooter. Our officers are trained. All of our training meets or exceeds the California Peace Officer standards and trainings. And additionally, we try to do some progressive training. Some of the stuff we do is LGBTQ plus training for all of our officers, racial profiling awareness training, unconscious bias training, de-escalation training. We really want our officers to have those tools to be aware of the community and the community's concerns and address those concerns and do our level best to make this the best community to live and work in that can possibly be.
Chief, and one other thing that I wanted to mention is to keep in mind, as it turns out, this incident involved a former student who was in student housing, but the East Campus community is a community that encompasses more people than just campus affiliated persons. So in addition to faculty, staff, and students, we also have other community members that from the broader community that have some sort of relationship to education. And so those people are in our campus, East Campus community as renters. I don't think they buy. They can't buy if they're not actual members of our CSUMB community, but they can rent. And those are the educational partners, so-called. That's the category that we designate. And that's a significant portion of the overall East Campus community. So yeah, as we look forward to ways to strengthen our sense of community on East Campus, we're going to have to also factor that in, that we have among us people who are not strictly speaking part of the university community, but are part of the broader educational community in the county. And so they may not be interacting with CSUMB affiliated individuals on a daily basis unless we make a proactive effort to do so. I just wanted to make that comment as a general observation, and now use up the rest of our time to broaden up the topics of questions, maybe to some of the larger issues. Aaron, based on the comments I just made and my introductory remarks, if there are some questions that are being raised in that general area, that's something that we could address now.
Thank you, President Ochoa. It looks like there's some general theme and questions about whether or not we're aware of any white supremacist or hate groups operating on campus, and what are we doing to combat them? What are we doing to prevent them?
We're not aware of any such hate groups on campus. So what to do to combat them? We know we have an investigator who has her ear to the ground, and she's listening and paying attention to social media and happenings on campus. And we have a great network of community partners, residents, folks from other departments who really share a lot of information with us, and that's all relationship based. So we find out about something like that, of course, we're going to want to do something about it. We're going to want to contact our federal partners and do our level best to try to keep that element off of our campus.
Yeah, and I'm sure that I mean, it's clear at the national level that I mean, we've recently heard the FBI director testify in Congress that domestic terrorism is now considered to be the major threat and something that is going to be looked at, and that's domestic right-wing terrorism and white supremacist type of movements. And so those things are going to be looked at, have a heightened level of scrutiny now nationally. And I'm sure, Chief, that your department is plugged into all those conversations as well. And so anything that might possibly hit our campus would certainly be on our radar screen.
Yeah, absolutely. We're watching what's happening nationally, and we're participating in joint terrorist task forces and getting all that information. Anything that's happening and anywhere in the nation really affects us, but certainly the regional stuff. Communication is absolutely the key, and we've seen what happens when communication breaks down between government agencies.
Yeah.
There's a number of questions that are more specific to overall, what is the university's response or plans to discouraging hate organizations in our campus community in general?
Well, you know, we've actually not waited until we've had to respond to hate organizations. We are not, as the chief said, we're not aware of hate organizations actually operating in our campus, but we have proactively promoted the concept of inclusive excellence and of equity and inclusion. When I came to the campus 9 years ago, shortly after arriving, I created the Office of Inclusive Excellence, appointed our chief diversity officer at the time, and have generally tried to sort of make a quantum leap in commitment to that agenda. And so by creating an environment in our campus where we're actively promoting inclusion and equity and mutual respect and understanding, we prevent those kinds of organizations from ever taking root within our campus. In order for those organizations to really prosper, there has to be already a certain sense of alienation and disconnectedness in the community, and we've been actively working to forestall anything like that happening. I do think that clearly the pandemic has made it a little more challenging for us all to remain connected and engage in activities that strengthen the bonds of community. But our commitment has been there from the beginning, and we've been working at it for my entire administration.
Is this this is a little bit of a bridge sort of between the two topics, but is this the first time that we've ever had an incident like this? What are we doing to prevent incidents like this in the future?
Depends on what like this means. The first
Yeah,
time
I mean,
weapons.
Right. So I think that if we're talking about if the incident is being characterized as an instance of a white supremacist or member of a hate group somehow uncovered in our campus, that's in fact a mischaracterization of what happened. It's all indications that we have now, and this continues to be investigated, are that this was an individual who was stockpiling parts of guns and running basically an operation for profit of selling those guns. The individual happened to have his personal views were right-wing and racist, but he was not part of any kind of organized movement, or was not acting out those beliefs in any way that was detectable on the campus. So that, if that's the kind of incident that was referred to in the question, then that incident didn't happen. If we narrow the incident to an incident where, let's say, a cache of, an arsenal or a cache of weapons or weapons parts was found, that would be one question that the chief could answer. And then the most restrictive possible way of characterizing this incident is this the first time that we found firearms on campus? I know for a fact that it's not the first time that had happened, that those happens, periodically, and the chief and his department handle that in a routine way. But the intermediate case of finding a cache like this, I'm not sure. So Chief, I don't think this has happened before, has it? With that kind of a stockpile.
I agree 100% with what you said, Dr. Cho, that you're right on the mark. But if the question was, have we had instances where officers have contacted and seized weapons? Yeah. Most of those weapons arrests are not CSUMB community members. In fact, a large number of the folks that we arrest aren't part of our campus community. They're folks who are passing through or come onto campus with ill intent. And it's not uncommon for our officers to seize weapons and charge felony charges for weapons possession on campus. There's just no tolerance for weapons on campus. People shouldn't be bringing their guns here.
But as far as this kind of a stockpile of stuff, we haven't really had anything like this before, right?
Oh, this case is a little unique in that ghost guns are something kind of new, and somebody assembling ghost guns, of course, is of concern. We've gone out, and folks, for whatever reason, have a number of weapons in their house, but nobody who's, again, it's under investigation, so I can't say these are allegations, but it appears nobody's been manufacturing and perhaps selling weapons. This is something new for us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things, I think the question also included what can be done in the future to prevent situations like this. If we talk about this intermediate characterization, I think that one of the things in retrospect, I believe that one of the things that happened is that with the onset of the pandemic, we discontinued the so-called wellness checks that periodically Residential Life would do of our students. And so if those had still been ongoing, this might have been detected sooner, the stuff that was found in the apartment. And so now that doesn't necessarily cover all of the eventualities, because the wellness checks can only be done for student housing, not for the rest of the housing of staff or of our educational partners that are in the area. So, but there is also a mechanism for at least periodically checking to make sure everything is kosher in terms of tenants meeting the terms of their lease and so forth. But for that, we will have to work with our property management company, Greystar. And we're going to be looking into setting up procedures so that we can do that. So that's something that I think this incident sort of highlighted for me is, okay, we probably need some mechanism like that, so that on a more or less of a regular time frame, we can become alerted about things like that.
There's a question related to UPD's training and experience, or the ability to leverage partners to investigate allegations or suspicion of white supremacy groups or domestic terror organizations operating in and around campus. Can you speak to UPD's training, or how we have partnerships to help in those situations when we believe something might warrant further investigation?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, we have partnerships with local law enforcement and federal law enforcement, and open lines of communication. And if necessary, we can tap those resources. We have the Peninsula Regional Violence Narcotics Task Force, in which we participate, and the JTTF, or Joint Terrorist Task Force, in which we participate. But We have an outstanding investigator, and we have officers that do outstanding investigations, and I'm very confident in their level and ability to investigate a case like this. If something larger is going on, or an investigation is extended, it's pretty normal for us. It's pretty normal for any small agency to ask for assistance from their law enforcement partners. That's pretty much how the business operates.
Perhaps this question relates to the history of race-related incidents in East Campus or student housing. Does the campus have a history of those? What are we doing in order to combat those?
Well, I mean, there have been, I guess in the past, there's been a few isolated incidents that I can recall. At one point, I think someone reported some chalk marks, for example, in our campus walkway that suggested a swastika. And there are other incidents that may be reported for our for student discipline, that sort of thing, but nothing that has, none of those things rose to the level of a threat that would involve our police department that I'm aware of. Chief?
First of all, this is zero tolerance for that on campus, but we have hate crimes and hate incidents are tracked closely. We report those out to the chancellor's office, and we work closely with our Clery director on campus, Shamika Jones, to assess things that occur and make sure that we're reporting them out. And certainly if a pattern of something were turning up, we would get the resources necessary to try to avert that.
As we're approaching the end of our time, I'm going to select a few questions that I see a series here about related to the timing of this town hall. Why are we doing it now? Why are we only inviting faculty and staff and not other members that are not affiliated with the university in the community, et cetera? So if you could talk to that.
Well, I think that when I made the decision to hold the town hall, I felt I wanted to make sure that our response was proportionate to the concern, the manner of the concern, the character of the concern, and also the segment of our community that was expressing those concerns. And those concerns came to us primarily from faculty and staff. They didn't come really that I'm aware of. There wasn't any significant student concern expressed about this, even though this incident actually happened in student housing. And of course, one reason for that may well be that we don't have that many students on campus right now with our pandemic virtual operating mode. So, one of the things that I didn't want to do is to elevate this incident to such a high level of visibility that that our response itself would in fact create more distress and concerns in the community than was warranted. So I felt that I wanted to respond to the concern that was emerging organically through word of mouth, but not fuel additional concerns, because we feel that in fact there are the issues being handled well, and the community is safe, and there is in fact no reason to be concerned about this particular incident.
There's a number of questions related to if we plan to change our communication strategies and timing related to incidents like this, individuals who have weapons on campus, other crime on campus.
So I think that, I have to say that nothing that has happened to date has led me to question the wisdom of our general practice not to issue routine press releases about incidents that happen on campus, which has been the approach that our chief has taken, and with which I'm in agreement. I think that there's a lot of work that our campus police does. As you heard, most of it is not, they're minor incidents, they're incidents of service more than of arrest or law enforcement. But as those go on a routine basis and are being handled, I don't see a reason to highlight that because we don't want to create a distorted impression of what may be the case. I think that there's been a lot of literature that shows that when people consume a lot of local news that tends to highlight crime incidents, they end up developing an impression of their level of crime and the safety that is at odds with, in fact, what the statistics show. So that's one reason why, in this case, given that the clery criteria were met, given that there was no emergency that required people to be alerted in real time, there's no continuing threat to the campus. I didn't see certainly the chief didn't, and I agreed that there was no reason to inform the campus community about it. And as we have discussed today, there were also no indications of any connection to a larger hate group or anything like that. So there was no potential for this being the tip of an iceberg or anything of that sort. That's why, if this situation were to repeat itself, I think that the only thing we've learned that might affect how we responded was, I think our initial sense was that this eviction took place quietly, and there didn't seem to be much concern because the campus was not, it was student housing and it was not populated, and therefore there was really very little awareness and low-key of this incident. And so if in fact it had been something that draw widespread attention and people were already actively wondering what was going on, obviously I think that would have been, again, in a responsive manner, we would have probably put something out just to make sure that rumors didn't spread, and misinformation. But that was, of course, hard to foresee in this particular case. But if we had been able to foresee that, then yes, there would have. In the future, I think we will continue to be very sensitive to that aspect of that potential. And if in fact we detect that the incident is being discussed, we would again share some information on the campus in a way that is designed not to exacerbate, the concern, but rather to address it.
We're very close to the end of our time, but there are two additional questions that I believe summarize a lot of the other questions that we haven't had a chance to answer. So if we can go over for a few moments, I'll pose those to you, President Ochoa.
Yeah.
Is there going to be any town hall, perhaps for students or others in East Campus who are not faculty and staff? And then adding to that, are there going to be community forums or there be other communications related to this, this subject matter as well as this incident going forward?
I really don't think that there's a need for further rehashing of this incident. We've had a participation of over 250 people in this webinar, so I'm sure the word was spread about what we have shared. I think that the broader issue of how can we strengthen our sense of community and safety within East Campus, I think that's an issue that we will continue to look at. And if there are some ideas, if we need input on specific directions to go, we may organize some sort of advisory group or have another gathering. Probably not this webinar mode, because maybe something more interactive. But I don't think this incident specifically, I think, warrants further coverage.
And then the other question, unfortunately, we do have a lot of them that we're not going to be able to get to, but looking through them, the other topic that comes up is, does the university plan to take additional steps, have additional plans to fight racism and hate crimes, similar kinds of activities in our campus community as well as in the East Campus neighborhoods?
Well, again, there's a premise there that I'm not entirely in agreement with. We don't have a hate crime problem or hate group problem in the campus. Our campus truly is an oasis relative to the broader society. We do, of course, bring in students from all across the state. We know that some students sometimes come with some intolerant views, and our challenge is to educate them and broaden their perspectives, and we do that in a variety of ways. Our whole effort in the inclusive excellence area is precisely to foster an environment where these kinds of things don't happen and will not happen. The President's Committee on Equity and Inclusion is a broad advisory group that is working with our Chief Diversity Officer to identify strategies to promote this equity and inclusion and inclusive excellence on our campus. Inclusive excellence is one of the 4 major strategic areas in our strategic plan. So this is ongoing work. This is our work day in and day out in the university.
Unfortunately, we've exceeded our time, and there are still some unanswered questions, but looking through them, I believe we have covered all of the topics, perhaps not to the depth or level that some of these questions drive to. As we are exceeding our time, would you like to make some closing remarks?
Yes, well, I just want to thank everybody for attending this webinar. I think that the large participation shows that we are, in fact, a close-knit community. We care about what happens in our community. We are connected. And I just want to, again, reassure you that our community is, in fact, safe, that this incident in particular was an incident that didn't have these broader repercussions having to do with hate groups and hate crimes, that our commitment to promoting equity and inclusion, tolerance, and anti-racism in our campus is undiminished, and it's been present throughout my tenure as president and the 9 years I've been here. And together with all of our colleagues, we're going to continue to do this work, and we will draw some lessons, some specific logistical lessons from this incident as far as how can we make some protocol changes in terms of checking periodically on our units in East Campus. But beyond that, I think people can be rest assured that our campus community is safe. Our campus police is there to serve us, and they're part of our community, and we're glad to have them supporting us. And so I want to thank the chief for joining me in this webinar and being forthcoming about as much as possible, given the ongoing investigations that are proceeding on the particulars of this case. So thank you all for coming, and I wish you all a good weekend. Bye-bye.
We've reached the end of the time for our Town Hall on East Campus Community Safety. All unanswered questions will be addressed offline and individually after the presentation. Please join us for our next all-faculty staff town hall on March 17 at 11 a.m. Thank you for attending.